Just
Yeah, I just.
Backer. Presentations from Sam.
Okay, let's begin.
Good afternoon. Welcome to day 23. We're over halfway through the session. We had some great debate on some bills on hunting. What other bills did we have out there on the floor? But welcome to Senate Chat, and especially welcome those who are watching us over the web. Welcome. Text your questions in or tweet them in. I think there's other ways to do that, Kirsten, but
Chat.
you can do it.
Comment on
Chat.
Facebook.
Okay.
Wherever.
Facebook.
Carry
Whatever your preference, send us your questions. We welcome you today. We'll start with questions from the media.
So you guys have a floor debate scheduled now for medical marijuana. How do you think it's going to go?
I think it's going to be an exciting day. It won't have too many boring moments. There'll be a lot of debate on both bills on Friday. We put them up on time certain in the order they were on the second reading calendar. So we'll hear Senator Vickers' bill first. That's 89, and then we'll hear Senate Bill 73 next.
Is Senate Bill 73 a dead bill walking?
I think the votes are still close. As I've been counting votes, it's going to be a close vote. At this point, I don't see it being much different than last year's vote on third reading. It's interesting how votes change, though, from second to third. And while that bill last year, or Senator Mattson's bill, it's not the same bill, got almost probably 20 votes on second reading calendar, it failed on the third reading calendar.
Does the fact that there's a ballot initiative now being discussed change the dynamics of things? They could remove this from your grasp entirely.
Yeah, and probably in a way that may have to be amended, because initiatives sometimes aren't in perfect form, and they're put in statute, and there's some unintended consequences. So that concerns us, obviously, but we're trying to determine what's the best policy for the state. That's what we do while we're here. And you have to get the votes. You have to get 15 votes here in the Senate to make something pass. And that gets a group of people upset. And we have an initiative process. It's not an easy process, and I don't think it should be an easy process. But we do have the ability to have pure democracy in the state. And so we'll see what they do with that.
Could that impact, though, this election year? If they get on the ballot, could that bring out a different type of voter, and could you see some changes in some districts, say going Republican to Democrat? I mean, it happened in Colorado.
Well, I think those are some possibilities. We've heard those arguments out there. But I think we have to vote our conscience here, what we feel is right, and without regards to what the initiative might be, because there isn't an initiative right now. There's a threat of an initiative. Senator Escamilla?
You know, I've served in the committee last year and this year where both bills have been introduced, and one of the conversations we had was what the state of Arizona went through with their initiative process, and how I think the legislature there, and my husband's a former legislator there, they regretted not having to make maybe more proactive decisions. And when the initiative came down, they had to do a lot of cleanup, a lot of things that were not practical from just implementation. And I think they probably would have just liked to have it pass in their legislature in retrospect versus sending it to initiative. And so it's interesting that we're having this conversation. In some states, they've had this whole situation already happening. So I voted for both bills. There's been a lot of conversation. Interim worked really hard on these issues. I mean, I think we spent probably 80% of our interim and social services, health and human services, just on the issue itself. So a conversation has been there. Not everyone has had as much information as us sitting in those committees. So I'm hopeful that more information is being shared with legislators and we can move forward. I think our caucus, even though we don't take positions, feels compelled that something needs to happen with regards to access to medical marijuana. And you'll see probably those votes tomorrow on Friday as our caucus moves forward with the voting.
But if it makes it on the ballot, do you think this could flip districts?
Yeah, I think some districts. I mean, a lot of in the Sally County area, districts have been, are being decided under 1,000 votes, 200 votes, some of those districts. If you have that incentive to come out to vote, it is a presidential year, so we already are going to see more people voting, which is exciting. But this will definitely, I think, with the support that's out there from the community, they'll be more incentivized to come out and vote, and we welcome that. I mean, I think as Democrats, we always want to see more people voting, and that could certainly have an impact in some of those districts.
Yeah, there's a lot of variables to that, and that's a kind of a crystal ball question. But anyway, we have Senator Shiazawa here. He also has a bill, a resolution that calls on Congress. I won't tell you what it does, but Senator Shiazawa, do you want to explain what your resolution does?
After that court,
Thank you.
I got you trip over it.
Well, SCR 11 is a resolution, and so with exactly that meaning. Now, it has two functions. The first function is what? It calls upon Congress, the FDA, the DEA, to reclassify cannabis from a Schedule I to a Schedule II. And I'd be happy to elaborate on the differences of that in a bit. But the other important resolve is that this will enable us to also pursue research at our very world-renowned and respected institutions here, University of Utah. And so the second resolve is just that. It calls upon our research institutions to take that next step forward. You should know that in the testimony before Health and Human Services yesterday, that we actually had representatives from USTAR, the University of Utah, who are there, and they already have Schedule I endorsements to go ahead and do research in this area. And the title of their consortium is going to be Medical Uses of Marijuana. And so we're going to do a prompt look at this and see how fast we can get some formal studies going. Now imagine, if you get Huntsman cancer, you get the University of Utah, USTAR, University of Utah School of Medicine, maybe even involve the VA. We can get neuroimaging, we can get controlled formal studies on these medications and ask the questions. What is the safety profile? What are the indications for this? Does it really work? And if so, on which people does it work? And on which people doesn't it seem to work? And then come up with some formal, credible research on this. Now, I've researched Senator Madsen's information, and I've reviewed his articles, whether it's New England Journal, JAMA, or these others. And one of the things that always comes out is what? The lack of formal research in this country that goes forth on this. And so that's what this resolution does. It calls upon Congress to do the rescheduling, but even while they're dithering over that, which they often do, it will allow us here at the University of Utah and other places here in this city to start on formal research.
This is research that they could do without additional federal approval or rescheduling.
Well, that's the whole point of having the Schedule I endorsement. So if you understand the difference between Schedule I and Schedule II, it's actually a felony for researchers currently to do any research on marijuana. And so this would allow them to do that. So they're not, in fact, in violation of their law. And so Dr. Clark, who testified yesterday, is already doing the CBD research. And that's actually self-funded through that group there. So what we're looking at is some creative funding maybe we can bring through USTAR, other organizations, so that it can still proceed. And that's the other issue, is getting funding.
Any questions for Senator Shizawa?
From the articles you reviewed, I guess from my understanding is a lot of the research that gets done is done overseas or in Europe. Have you seen anything that you feel like is compelling in terms of the body of research right now?
Well, one of the nice things about the foreign research, say for example the Israeli research, is you do have some foreign research there, and one of the things that our researchers can do is formally look at the foreign research and then look at what they're talking about and see what are the indications that really might be useful for this. For example, does it really work in PTSD, chronic spasticity, chronic pain, glaucoma, or some of the myriad of the other things? We seem to have preliminary positive results in CBD and children with Dravet syndrome. But does it work in adults? The anticonvulsant side effects are awful. And some of the side effects on other medications are just as bad. So if we could have an alternative, but credible research, and that's the whole point. So we could do an analysis of foreign research, and we have U.S. research as well. And that's one of the great things about this country is, no matter what you say about R&D and all the other things, is this country here does lead the world in formal, credible research. The breakthroughs have really come through in this country.
So, Senator, isn't there also an issue in this research, or the formal research could actually establish this better, dosages and concentrations, CBD, THC, and other elements, so that there's some consistency in the drug that would at least have the effect that it's supposed to have on whatever situation you have?
President Niederhauser, I think that's exactly the issue on safety profiles. It's one thing to have a medication out there, and it's another to know how much to give. One of the problems with, say, in Colorado, with the edible forms of THC or cannabis is what? Pediatric overdoses. That's indisputable. They are seeing a big rise in pediatric overdoses in their ERs. My colleagues from those ERs are citing those things. So, and that's when children, for example, will go ahead and take a brownie or a cookie or a drink that's laced with whatever this is, a THC or cannabis solution, and we don't know the concentration. So what might be safe for an adult is clearly not safe in the pediatric adolescent group. So it will establish some standards there.
Senator Knudsen.
Would you prescribe or recommend, I guess you can't prescribe it, but would you recommend medical marijuana to any of your patients?
Well, I think medical marijuana is useful in some cases. We already know, for example, Marinol, which is synthetic THC, is useful in cancer patients who have anorexia, weight loss, and who have decreased appetite. So we already know that there are some benefits to this. What we don't know, and what I'm concerned about, is the so-called entourage effect. I want to see how much effect that has and if it's as efficacious as they say it is. So let's look at some of the 100 or whatever compounds it is. Let's at least get some formal research going on this. And the thing is, it doesn't just kick the can down the road, which is one of the concerns. We're talking about people getting together, getting us some formal reports back to interim, to either business economic development or to HHS as a possible as collaboration going forward.
But isn't there a problem with, because since it is Schedule 1, you got to order the plants from the lab in Mississippi, and there's a limited number, and they're poor quality, and these are all things I've heard from.
Understood. And there, in any kind of study, we're going to have to deal with this with the Schedule 1 research. And you're right. Chances are with the federal government, the way they're probably so derailed right now with the Scalia thing that they're probably not going to be willing to do a lot of things. But the fact is that without asking for the rescheduling, you won't ever make this in a research area. So what we've taken is the next step, and getting Schedule 1 researchers. You're right, there might be some logistical challenges. There will be. But if we don't try, I guarantee we won't get this done.
It's the whole.
Would you favor putting any kind of decision off until you have more information? I mean, at the legislature, would you prefer not to vote on any of these bills at this point until you have more of this information?
Me personally?
You personally, yeah.
I think the CBD, we already know, has a very safe profile as far as use in seizures and pediatric. Now, whether or not that has any benefit in the other indications as proposed is something that's got to be seen. And that's the one thing we need to do, ask and answer about that bill is what? Is how they're going to conduct their research and on whom they're going to give this medication to in the adult population. So we have to have some more research into this area before we expand that indication. The other bill is a big step. Now, I will tell you, and I'll just tell you this as one person, not speaking for the Senate or the Senate leadership, but as one person. I've treated a lot of patients who've been on recreational and medical marijuana. And I don't think it's nearly as harmful as some people say. And I also don't think it's the panacea and the cure-all that other people say.
So the principle here is measure twice, cut once. This is a big policy. We would like to have more substantive information. And so hopefully through a resolution and with some pressure on the federal government, we can find get some solid research so that we have the safety issues taken care of. And then, if it isn't on schedule, it gets to Schedule 2, then you can dispense it through the pharmacy. An already established and proven and professional way to dispense medications. Anyway, Senator Knudsen, do you have a comment?
Before Senator Shiazawa leaves, you recall in committee I asked you a question regarding your contacts with our Congress people and to get their support to move from Schedule 1 to Schedule 2. Could you explain that or give that answer again?
Well, the response that I've received tentatively from Representative Chaffetz is that they certainly support the CBD issue. Now, as far as full plant cannabis, and I'm reluctant to speak for Representative Chaffetz, but what I understood him to say is he's still concerned, though, about some of the criminal issues that are affecting the rescheduling, and that would be things like trafficking, possession, things like that. And so it does have some issues there because it is still a Schedule 1. And I think that's our challenge, Senator, is what? Is just to get our Congress people and the President. There's two ways of rescheduling. One is legislatively through Congress, and the other is through the executive branch, either through the DEA and the FDA, and possibly through the Attorney General. So those are some of the ways it can be done.
And what if the DOJ changes with the election? And now it decides to enforce the law rather than give a pass.
Thank you.
On the law. So those are a lot of questions out there. So again, measure twice, cut once. Any other questions? We have some questions from viewers.
We have one that came in yesterday over Twitter just right after we adjourned, and they're probably watching again. So they asked, what is being done to reduce the cost of public services, including education, i.e. efficient use of existing funds versus more funds?
The governor has an initiative of reducing costs by 25%, an efficiency initiative. I know he's been working on that. We have cut government way back during the recession. We reduced government substantially, which it hasn't completely recovered. I know Senator Hilliard might be able to address that. So there has been some things done. We are working on base budgets where we used to didn't spend a lot of time on base budgets. Base budget is what's been passed last year and many, many years before. We are now looking at those programs to see if they need to be modernized or if we can do without them. So that's a great question. There is some efforts that we are doing, but we do have a short session, and so it's impossible to look at everything in the budget in one session, but over several sessions we can look at many things.
Well, I just add that it's we try to be as efficient as we can, and you have certain politics and human beings you're just dealing with. You can't just run it like a machine. But I've been really impressed with what our state agencies have done and coming back with new proposals of new ways to do things. And I think if you look at our government even 10 years ago and compare to it now, you'd be shocked at how more efficient they are and how more focused they are, which I think has been a good thing. Of these budget reductions we've had, we've been forced to do it. It's hard to do it just voluntarily, and I'm pretty proud of the number of things we've done. Have we done enough? Probably not. Can we do more? Probably yes. But it's just a process of getting things done.
You know, we have great state employees, and they've been doing without and making do, and so we appreciate all their efforts. Any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you, President.
Thank you.
Yeah.